Good morning and welcome to the Public Service Commission of South Carolina. We are here this morning in a proceeding in docket number 2024-2-E. Let's take a roll call of commissioners. This morning we have Commissioner Justin Williams, Vice Chair Powers, Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner Caston, Chair Belser. I note for the record that Commissioner Carolee Williams is on leave to attend a funeral and is out of town. I'll recognize our staff counsel, Ms. Mosier, to read the docket, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, commissioners and parties. We're here today for the proceeding in docket number 2024-2-E, which is the annual review of base rates for fuel costs for Dominion Energy South Carolina, Inc., for a potential increase or decrease in fuel adjustment. The proceeding has been scheduled for today, March 28th, 2024 at 10 a.m. Your Honor, I believe all parties participating in this matter are available and the docket is in order.
Thank you, Ms. Mosier. Let's take appearances from the parties. Who's representing Dominion Energy South Carolina?
Good morning, Chair Belser and members of the commission. My name is Chad Burgess. I'm in-house corporate counsel for Dominion Energy South Carolina, and with me today is Jason Richardson and Michael Anselmo from the law firm of McGuire Woods, who serve as the company's outside counsel. It's a pleasure to appear before you today, and we appreciate the opportunity to present the company's case.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. South Carolina Energy Users Committee.
Madam Chair, I'm Scott Elliott. I'm here on behalf of the energy users.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. CMC Steel, South Carolina.
Alex Shishis for CMC Steel.
Thank you, Mr. Shishis. And Office of Regulatory Staff.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. Joshua Alston on behalf of ORS, and with me today I've got Lanice Mitchell and Cassidy Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Alston. Are there any preliminary matters which need to come before the Commission before we begin?
Yes, Chair Belser, just one preliminary matter. Good morning. As the Commission is aware, Dominion Energy South Carolina, ORS, and the South Carolina Energy Users Committee executed a settlement agreement which was filed on March 26th and resolved all outstanding issues between the settling parties. Furthermore, the remaining intervener, CMC Steel, has informed the parties that CMC Steel does not object to the settlement. As set forth in the agreement, ORS agrees with Dominion's balances and adjustments for base fuel and DERP avoided costs for the 12-month review period that ended December 2023, with the exception of certain adjustments for environmental and avoided capacity and DERP incremental costs for the review period ending in December 2023. Through the settlement agreement, the company has agreed to accept ORS's adjustments to resolve those issues. Additionally, the company has agreed to certain requests for additional reporting that will aid parties in evaluating these yearly applications on a go-forward basis. I'd like to thank the parties for working collaboratively to reach the settlement that is reasonable in the public interest in accordance with law and regulatory policy. At this time, I would request that the settlement agreement be marked for identification and entered into the record as the first hearing exhibit. And I would just note that there is a Scrivener's error within the settlement agreement at paragraph B10, subsection B. On the third line of that subsection, it says, following the quarters ending June 30th and September 30th, 2023, that's a Scrivener's error. It should read 2024, and the ORS can file a corrected copy of the agreement after the hearing today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alston. Any objection to admitting the settlement agreement as hearing exhibit number 1?
No objection.
Hearing no objection, the settlement agreement will be marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 1 and admitted into the evidence of this case. And y'all are going to file a corrected version through the DMS, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Thank you. Mr. Burgess, would Dominion like to proceed?
Yes, Chair Belser, we're ready to call our first panel of witnesses. So I will call Robert Justice, Tom Brookmeyer, and Henry Delk to the stand.
Ms. Gretchen.
All right, Mr. Justice, I'm going to start with you. Would you please state your full name for the record?
Robert Lee Justice Jr.
And Mr. Justice, I believe this is your first time testifying before the commission. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I want you to relax, get comfortable. You let me have all the nerves up here today, okay? Mr. Justice, would you please tell the commission by whom you're employed and in what capacity?
I'm deployed by Dominion Energy, South Carolina. I'm the site vice president at VC Summer Nuclear Station.
And Mr. Justice, did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your direct supervision and pre-filed in this docket 11 pages of direct testimony?
I did.
And do you have any changes or corrections required of your direct testimony?
No changes.
If I ask you all the questions contained in your direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
They would.
Chair Belzer, at this time, we would move into the record the pre-filed direct testimony of Robert Justice Jr. as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Justice's pre-filed direct testimony will be received into the record as if given from the stand.
Mr. Justice, have you prepared a summary of your direct testimony?
I have.
Would you please deliver that at this time?
I will. My direct testimony details the operating performance of the VC Summer Nuclear Station during the review period from January 1st of 2023 through December 31st, 2023. VC Summer's net capacity factor during the review period was 101.51%, and the gross generation output totaled 7,820,098 megawatt hours. The company achieved its primary objective of safe and efficient operation of the VC Summer Station during the review period. INPO rated VC Summer's overall performance as exemplary, which is the highest achievable rating that a nuclear power plant can achieve. The NRC reported that VC Summer operated in a manner that preserved public health and safety. The company worked with NRC to address an issue with the fuel oil piping on one of the company's emergency diesel generators, which is one of the two emergency diesel generators at VC Summer Station. The company replaced the affected piping and replaced the piping on the other emergency diesel generator as a precautionary measure. The company further provided the NRC with a detailed risk analysis, which included demonstrating that the ability of the Alpha emergency diesel generator run for 6 hours with the pipe leak. Based on the detailed risk information provided by the company, the NRC concluded that the risk was low to moderate, aka white, risk. The company completed a root cause analysis and is implementing a design change to be completed by the end of the first quarter of 2024 to the fuel oil system on both emergency diesel generators to increase operating margin, and this modification has been completed on both diesel generators. VC Summer experienced one outage prior to refuel 27 to correct an issue with the thrust bearing wear device on the Charlie main feed pump, which is one of 3 main feed pumps. Due to the time required to fix the issue and restart the unit, it was decided to begin refuel 27 outage early rather than try to start back up 2 days before the planned outage. The company completed key maintenance and modification tasks during the refuel 27. These included replacing approximately 1/3 of the station's 157 fuel assemblies, performing scheduled maintenance and testing activities that cannot be performed when the plant remains operational. Also replaced key components that would improve plant reliability. In total, the company completed 4,695 preventive maintenance, corrective maintenance, plant modification activities, and surveillance tasks during refuel 27. The next refueling outage, refuel 28, is scheduled for the fall of 2024 and will include approximately 2,610 work orders. These tasks will increase reliability of the facility. The company did not transfer spent fuel from the spent fuel pool to its dry cask storage facility during the review period. The company's next transfer remains scheduled for the fall of 2025. During the review period, the company began the subsequent license renewal process with the NRC, and details are set forth in my testimony. The renewal process will help the company in its long-term planning horizon, such as inclusion of the VC Summer's generation output in the integrated resource plans and the company's future fuel purchasing strategies. This concludes my summary.
Thank you, Mr. Justice. I'll now turn to you, Mr. Delk. Would you please state your full name for the record?
My name is Henry E. Delk, Jr.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Dominion Energy, South Carolina. I am Director of Power Generation Operations.
And did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your direct supervision and pre-filed in this docket direct testimony consisting of 17 pages?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections required of your direct testimony?
I do not.
If I ask you all the questions contained in your direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Chair Belzer, at this time, we would move into the record the pre-filed direct testimony of Henry Delk as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Delk's pre-filed direct testimony will be received into the record as if given from the stand.
And Mr. Delk, did you also have any exhibits attached to your direct testimony?
Yes, I did.
Are there any changes or corrections required of your exhibit?
No, there's not.
Chair Belzer, we would move into the record as the next hearing exhibit, the exhibit identified as HED-1, which is attached to Mr. Delk's testimony.
Exhibit attached to Mr. Delk's pre-filed direct testimony identified as HED-1 will be marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 2 and received into the evidence of this case.
All right, thank you, Chair Belzer. Mr. Delk, have you prepared a summary of your direct testimony?
I have.
Would you please deliver that?
Good morning, Chair Belser and members of the Commission. My testimony describes the operating performance of the company's non-nuclear power generation units, including GenCo's Williams Station, during the review period of January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2023. There were changes to the company's non-nuclear generating facilities during the review period, including the completion of the sequence of advanced gas path upgrades at Jasper Station and Columbia Energy Center. The 4 combustion turbine units at PAR were retired, followed by decommissioning and demolition activities that followed at that site in preparation for construction of 2 planned replacement units. Further, as an update on the Bushy Park combustion turbine replacement unit, construction is well underway and progressing towards first fire by summer and commercial operation later this summer to early fall. As demonstrated by the availability and forced outage factors detailed in my testimony, the company's non-nuclear power generation facilities operated efficiently and dependably during the review period. The company executed 6 major planned outages and did not experience any significant forced outages during the review period. 3 of the major planned outages occurred in spring 2023 at Watery Station on Units 1 and 2, and Columbia Energy Center on Unit 2, and at Cope Station. The other 3 planned outages occurred in fall 2023 at Columbia Energy Center and Williams Station and McMeekin Station. In conclusion, the company asked the Commission find that the operating performance of its non-nuclear power generation units and GenCo's Williams Station was reasonable and prudent in the review period. Thank you. This completes the summary of my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Delk. And Mr. Brookmeyer, would you please state your full name for the record?
Yes, my name is Tom Allen Brookmeyer.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Dominion Energy Services Incorporated as a manager of nuclear fuel procurement.
And did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your direct supervision and pre-filed in this docket direct testimony consisting of 11 pages?
I did.
Are there any changes or corrections required of your direct testimony?
No, there's none.
If I ask you all the questions contained in your direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Chair Belzer, we would move into the record the pre-filed direct testimony of Tom Brookmeyer as of given orally from the stand.
Mr. Brookmeyer's pre-filed direct testimony will be received into the record as if given from the stand.
Mr. Brookmeyer, did you also have an exhibit attached to your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes, I did. It's a display of the nuclear fuel cycle.
And are there any changes or corrections required of that exhibit?
No, there's none.
Chair Belzer, we would move into the record the exhibit attached to Mr. Brookmeyer's pre-filed direct testimony, which was identified as TAB-1.
The exhibit attached to Mr. Brookmeyer's pre-filed direct testimony and with the designation TAB-1 will be marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 3 and received into the evidence of this case.
Thank you, Chair Belzer. Mr. Brookmeyer, have you prepared a summary of your direct testimony?
Yes, I have.
Would you please deliver that at this time?
Certainly. Good morning, Chair Belzer and members of the Commission. As the manager of nuclear fuel procurement at Dominion Energy Services Incorporated, my testimony focuses on 3 main areas related to the nuclear fuel purchasing process for VC Summer Nuclear Station. First, I explain the nuclear fuel purchasing process for DESC generation. Second, I discuss the market conditions and prices for the front-end components, meaning specifically uranium, conversion services, enrichment services, and fuel fabrication for the January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2023 review period. And third, I provide a near-term outlook of both spot and term prices for these front-end components. The company continues to follow its standard procurement and purchasing practices, and currently it has long-term commitments for uranium, conversion services, enrichment services, and fabrication. As for market conditions and prices, the market has continued to experience increases in spot and term prices for uranium conversion and enrichment, but it has not experienced significant shifts in fabrication prices. These market changes affect the company's near-term nuclear fuel expense, but only minimally, given the company's current mix of long-term and front-end component contracts and existing inventory. In conclusion, the company asked the Commission to conclude that it made reasonable and prudent efforts to maintain market-based prices and reliable supply for its nuclear fuel requirements at VC Summer Nuclear Station, and that its nuclear fuel purchasing practices were reasonable and prudent for the review period. This concludes a summary of my direct testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Brookmeyer. Chair Belzer, the parties who executed the settlement agreement have agreed not to cross-examine each other's witnesses. Therefore, this panel is presented to CMC Steel for examination as well as the Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Mr. Shishus, any questions for this panel?
Nothing from CMC.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions of these witnesses? Commissioner Thomas?
Thank you and good morning. I have one question just for some clarification on the settlement agreement itself. I'm looking at page 9, section B11, and it talks about the recommendations of ORS witness Thompson and the going to the semi-annual and 6-month periods for the reports, and I think that that is intended to be go forward. Let's just call it indefinitely, not just next year. Is that correct?
Commissioner Thomas, I'll take that question. Yes, I believe going forward, we currently produce reports on a monthly basis. However, the more lengthy reports following our outage season, we have typically followed those up at the end of the year in preparation for fuel hearing. And I believe the request was to do it on a more frequent basis. So following our spring outages, we would compile those reports. And then the fall outage would be the second set of reports. And we've agreed to do that going forward. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, further questions for this panel?
I have one more.
I'm sorry. I thought your light was off. I apologize.
That's all right. So this is for Mr. Brookmeyer and the the purchases of uranium and what's going on in that market. And you mentioned in your testimony the numerous opportunities to restart idled uranium production and develop new production in various other countries. So really I was just thinking more in terms of overview, high level, where those located, and what do you believe that the impact will be to the uranium markets?
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Most of the restarts that we're currently seeing are what we call juniors, the junior type mines. They're smaller and in areas that have perhaps a higher cost of production. So as the uranium price lifts somewhat, they are able to come to the market and get their mines restarted. And so we're talking about mines, some of which exist in the United States, some in Canada, some in Australia, and another one more specifically in Namibia, Africa. So we're seeing more and more new entrants, or actually restarted entrants, into the market. And what that's going to have in our looking forward is going to have a balancing effect on uranium prices. As more material is produced, we're going to see a downward trend in prices. So it's a balancing act for the uranium market that we're seeing right now. And right now the prices are high as a result of uncertainty with the Russian conflict and with uncertainty with hedge funds as people become more involved with the uranium market, trying to purchase uranium and then sell it real quick, as the hedge funds do. But as the new entrants come in and they become stable, we do expect to see a lower price outlook and cost.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. That's all the questions I had.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Powers?
Thank you, Chair Belser. Just following up on that, Mr. Brookmeyer, I don't remember when it is, but I know we were here some time ago and we talked about the fact that could you not store this uranium and why not get it before this whole war thing blows up and we're in the middle of it, and guess what? We're in the middle of it. Was there not some internal discussions about all this or some sort of foresight about the Russian situation?
Well, we do, just to be specific about that, we do maintain an inventory of uranium and enriched uranium product. And so we do have what we would call a strategic inventory or hedge material against even potential disruptions to get us past those events. Did we have any foresight as to the Russian invasion? No, not really. And nor did we have any insight necessarily as potential bans on the enriched uranium side, because we're already limited in how much enriched uranium this country can bring into the United States. That's by the Russian suspension agreement. So it's already limited to begin with. But as
could you explain that? I don't understand when you say limited.
Well, it's limited to right now 20% of the U.S. requirements for enrichment needs by its nuclear reactors here in the U.S. Only 20% can be imported from Russia, and all the rest has to come from other sources. And that's gonna drop down into the future to 15% if no ban is put in place.
Where do those limits come from?
They come from a report that's put together by the World Nuclear Association. It's their nuclear fuel report, and the U.S. Department of Commerce sets those limits based on estimated needs in the U.S.
Okay. Well, here we are now in the middle of it. Is there any insight or discussion or plans for the future to look at? I don't see any of this as a short-term problem with Russia.
No, good question. No, we don't either. And so yes, we are looking forward to having additional material brought in from Western countries and Western supply. We are also supporting new capacity expansion by these Western suppliers. And speaking specifically for enrichment, that's going to be existing suppliers are Urenco and Orano. We're working with new entrants to the market. And but this doesn't happen very quickly because enrichment is a high dollar cost of entry, and it takes a long time to get new capacity established. So we're looking down the road, supporting new capacity, and starting to layer in contracts and supply for the 2030, 2040 timeframe. We're covered with our inventory here at VC Summer for the rest of this decade and possibly even into the early 2030s with material. So there's the impact of any of this disruption or potential disruption does not affect VC Summer.
At the moment.
At the moment. And we're confident it won't in the future.
Is any unusual, when you do store it, is any unusual storage cost that?
No, we do not.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Justice, I'm looking at your testimony, or I guess, which includes your history, work history. They've had you for 40 years and they're just now letting you come to town. Or, if I understand right, you've been at VC Sumner how long?
40 years this past January 6th.
Well, that's with the company. How long have you been at the nuclear station?
I started out there as a contractor in January 6th of 1984, right out of high school.
Well, and I think the question is, with this problem you had with the thrust bearing wear device, which is way out of my understanding, and that you have now put in some sort of method to check on these things. I can't remember the term. Having been there 40 years, was this just something that slipped up, or is this something that someone should have known, or what's your take on it?
Yeah, well, we have three main feed pumps, and we do major overhauls with the vendor every 10 years. So the last time we overhauled this particular pump, the Charlie pump, was back in 2014 with the vendor. So it was coming due for its 10-year major overhaul, and that's when we set this thrust-bearing wear detector up. So it's protected. It's a very expensive pump, large, turbine-driven. One of the three provide all the feed water to the unit. So it's a very expensive pump. So it has a lot of devices that protect that pump from being seriously damaged. So if you get extensive wear on the bearing, this thrust wear detector will have pressure will go up, the oil pressure, and it will trip the pump. So when we set up in 2014 with feeler gauges, and either when we set it up or when we tightened everything back up, somehow it moved to the point where it was set a little too close to the trip set point. So over the wear over the 10 years, and then when we were going to the outage, when we shut the one pump off, that moved its operating characteristics. And when it did that, when it was enough to pick up that trip and trip the pump. So the trip was made to protect the pump, which it did, but then it resulted in a unit shutdown.
Well, in any repairs, it seems like you went about 19, 20 days longer than you wanted to or expected to. Why is that?
There were several issues we had. So we ended up starting the outage 2 days early because the pump tripped. So we lost a little bit of time there getting actually, transitioned into the outage, but we didn't lose the full 2 days. But, we weren't as efficient getting into the outage, so a little bit there. But the main thing we had is, we put a new Raptor vessel head in about 6 years ago. And, it's a new head, goes on to the original vessel. And so the tolerance is a little tight with the new head. And so we had some issues with our guide studs that you basically guide the head up and down when you go to refuel. And so we got in some binding there. And so it took us 3 or 4 days to get that resolved, which we did. So that we lost, that's all critical path to unload and reload the core. So we lost about, 3.5 days, 4 days there. And then we're coming back up. We did some preventive maintenance on some of our, important valves. And you don't know if that maintenance is going to really work until you press and heat the unit back up. So as part of that retest, when we heated the unit back up, we had some leakage. So we had to cool back down, and we had to go back and rework those valves. And so that ended up costing us about 9 days, 8 days. So between those two things, that's where we were about 11.5 days extended outage.
And I'm sure, because you've expressed it real well, that y'all prepared some sort of analysis about the root cause and how this all happened. Has that analysis been provided to the Office of Regulatory staff?
I know all of our causal analysis was provided to them as part of our testimony. So they would have all those evaluations. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you, sir. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Caston?
Just to follow up, I don't know how expensive those pumps are, but I take your word, they're very expensive, and along with other equipment. And the preventive maintenance you talked about. And I think, when I think relative to like predictive maintenance, and you were talking about different devices or whatever that are on these pumps to trip them, so things don't just destroy themselves. Are those, thinking maybe preventive, predictive maintenance, do those devices, is that kind of the way they're set up, whether it's maybe a vibration, a temperature, an ampere, is that what you're talking about in these kind of devices or things that are set up? I'm just wanting to know, just for my edification and education.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Gass. So when these units were originally designed, 50 years ago, and we've been operating for 40 years, commercial operation VC Summer, it was more designed to, the pump trips, you resolve it, come back. Over the last, 20 years, we've got much more predictive. Computers available to do monitoring that I never dreamed of 40 years ago. We monitored everything, and one of the things we did on the feed pumps, one of the main things, and this is an interim measure, is we didn't know how close we were to that trip set point. So, it could be wearing it close. So we put on pressure gauges. Now we can monitor pressure, so we can see, hey, the normal operating pressure is 25 pounds. 35 is a trip, so if we get up to 30 pounds, we can plan a shutdown or whatever we need to do. We did not have that capability before. And then longer term, we're going to set up where we'll have 2 out of 3 logic coincidence. So our mantra right now in nuclear power is reliability. What can we do to predict failures, not have failures? So we're spending a lot of money and time and effort as the nuclear industry to be able to do that and not have any reliability issues.
I'm glad to hear that, because it seems like the trend, and I'm assuming those devices, the programs and such, kind of track those trends.
Matter of fact, even we have a whole monitoring group up at Innsbruck as part of the corporate basic organization now, and all their sole job is that all the computer data goes to them, and they help monitor all this stuff too. So if sometimes we're missing something that's maybe changing, that's what they do for a living. They monitor that equipment. So we have multiple eyes monitoring equipment, and every day we keep adding more and more monitoring.
Very good. Thank you, and took you 40 years to get here, but glad to hear. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thanks, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, anything further for this panel? Hearing none. Mr. Burgess, any redirect?
Chair Belzer, I have no redirect. And as this panel steps down, Mr. Brookmeyer does have a plane to catch this afternoon. I'm very well aware of your standing rule. I've explained that to him. I will personally chase him down if we need to recall him.
Hopefully that won't be necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you for your appearance and your testimony this morning. You may stand down. Thank you. Mr. Richardson.
Morning, Chair Belzer and members of the commission. The company calls Mr. Michael Shin, Ms. Rose Jackson, and Dr. Hua Fang as the next panel.
Would you please raise your right hands? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you'll give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Mr. Shin, we'll start with you. Can you please state your full name for the record?
Michael David Shin.
And who are you employed and in what capacity?
Just a second, Mr. Richardson. Let's make sure his microphone is on.
Dominion Energy Services Incorporated as the manager of market origination.
And did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your direction 23 pages of direct testimony pre-filed on February 15th, 2024?
I did.
And if I asked you all the questions contained in your pre-filed direct testimony here today, would your answers be the same?
They would.
Chair Belzer, I move that the pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Michael Shin be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Shin's pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given from the stand.
Mr. Shin, have you prepared a summary of your pre-filed direct testimony?
I have.
Can you please present your summary to the commission?
Certainly. Good morning, Chair Belzer and members of the commission. My testimony describes the procurement and delivery of the coal number 2 fuel oil, limestone, and associated transportation that is used in Dominion Energy South Carolina's non-nuclear power generation plants while focusing on the reliability of supply, conformity with operational and environmental requirements, and obtaining reasonable prices. I also discuss changes that have occurred in coal markets since the last annual fuel adjustment hearing and how these changes affected coal procurement during the review period. Natural gas, coal, and number 2 fuel oil prices fluctuate based on factors outside of the company's control and impact the company's fuel purchasing strategies and the purchase price of the commodities.
The company always strives to maintain flexibility in managing its coal inventories and purchasing at economically reasonable prices while ensuring that the company's service commitments are reliably and prudently met. Under most market conditions, DESC acquires coal under a blend of long-term and spot purchases to allow the flexibility necessary to manage its generation assets in the most cost-effective way. Managing its coal inventories in this way allows the company to purchase the most competitively priced fuel while remaining mindful that its burn rate can fluctuate due to market conditions and changes in the price of coal or natural gas. Since the last annual fuel adjustment hearing, the coal and oil markets have both reduced in cost. This reduction in market prices, if they maintain the same trend, will reduce the forecasted price for each commodity. This continued reduction will continue to put pressure on suppliers to contain cost and could limit the available suppliers able to meet our required specifications. During the review period, the company entered a long-term contract with a reliable supplier. The contract was for a term of 3 years with a competitive price when compared to others' offers received. The company had a 2023 burn rate for coal of 1,677,951 tons in the production of electricity for its customers. The projected burn rate for coal in 2024 is approximately 1,465,000 tons. The company has contracted for adequate coal supply to meet 2024 forecasted needs through a combination of long-term and short-term contracts. DES's current purchasing plan, according to the current forecast, will allow the company to maintain its inventories at target levels of approximately 680,125 tons of coal and to maintain enough coal to run each coal unit at full capacity for approximately 45 days. In contrast to the time variances inherent in coal purchasing contracts, contracts for number 2 fuel oil or requirements contracts are competitively solicited every 2 years and generally are priced on market indices that adjust daily. The forecasted price of number 2 fuel oil has declined and shows on current forecast to remain stable with normal variability. The company currently emits less than its sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide emission allowances allocated to it by the EPA, so the company was not required to purchase emission allowances during the review period and does not anticipate having to buy any emission allowances in 2024. CSX Transportation remained the primary rail transporter of coal for DESC, and the CSX contract rates were renegotiated during the review period with revised terms. The company also did not renew an expired contract with Norfolk Southern to allow for additional transport capacity of coal into Wateree Station. CSX and NS have both increased crew counts, which has decreased the delays encountered in 2022 significantly. The fuel department also secured adequate and reliable supplies of environmental reagents for the operation of various pollution control systems at the company's power generation facilities. The company's purchasing strategies remain effective and market priced. In conclusion, I respectfully request that the Commission find that the company's fuel purchasing practices for coal, number 2 fuel oil, lime, ammonia, and limestone, and associated transportation were reasonable and prudent for the review period. Thank you for your time. This completes the summary of my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Shin. Ms. Jackson, can you please state your full name for the record?
Rose Moore Jackson.
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Dominion Energy Services Incorporated as the Director of Fuel Commodities.
And did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your direction 18 pages of direct testimony pre-filed on February 15th, 2024?
Yes, sir.
And do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes, sir. I have one update. Dominion Energy South Carolina Incorporated filed an update in docket number 2022-259-E on February 22nd, 2024, related to the estimated in-service date for Mountain Valley Pipeline. Therefore, please make the following change to update my testimony. On page 9, line 17, strike April 2024 and replace it with the second quarter of 2024.
And if I asked you all the questions contained in your pre-filed direct testimony here today, except for the update you just gave, would your answers be the same?
Yes, sir, they would.
And Chair Belzer, I move that the pre-filed direct testimony of Ms. Jackson be entered in the record as given orally from the stand.
Ms. Jackson's pre-filed direct testimony as amended from the stand here this morning will be received into the record as if given orally.
Thank you. And Ms. Jackson, did your pre-filed direct testimony include an exhibit labeled Exhibit RMJ-1?
Yes, sir.
And Chair Belzer, I move that Exhibit RMJ-1 be entered into the record as the next hearing exhibit.
The exhibit RMJ-1, which accompanied Ms. Jackson's pre-filed direct testimony, will be marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 4 and admitted into the evidence of this case.
And Ms. Jackson, have you prepared a summary of your direct testimony?
Yes, sir.
Can you please present your summary to the commission?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chair Belzer and members of the commission. My testimony provides information about the natural gas purchasing process for Dominion Energy South Carolina, or DESC generation, discusses natural gas prices for the review period, and offers the outlook for natural gas prices in the near term. The gas purchases made by the Gas Supply Department are driven by the needs of the electric generation group. Once DESC Economic Resource Commitment Group decides that natural gas is the economical choice for providing reliable power to our customers, our department is directed to purchase gas supplies for delivery with a stated term and volume at the best available current market prices. Prices in the NYMEX natural gas commodity market began the review period at $3.99 per decatherm. The lowest daily NYMEX settle price during the review period occurred on March 29, 2023 at $1.99 per decatherm due to moderated weather later in March that decreased heating demand combined with increased gas production and storage levels above the 5-year average as reported in the U.S. Energy Information Administration storage report. During the summer period, April through October, NYMEX daily settle prices ranged from $2.01 per decatherm to $2.92 per decatherm and averaged $2.49 per decatherm for the period. Over the course of the summer period, natural gas prices were influenced by increasing demand from electric power generation, storage refilling, and record levels of liquefied natural gas exports. Natural gas prices began to rise in October due to the updated weather forecast, which indicated a cold winter season, and closed out the summer period at the highest price point of $3.58 per decatherm on October 31, 2023. Shortly thereafter, natural gas prices began to retreat in November, ultimately dropping to a low of $2.31 per decatherm on December 12, 2023, as a result of warmer than normal weather coupled with the national storage levels above the 5-year average. Natural gas prices closed the review period at $2.51 per decatherm. During the review period, DESC purchased approximately 94,300,000 decatherms of natural gas for electric generation at an approximate average price of $2.70 per decatherm. Despite changes in the interstate pipeline market and some of the company's expected capacity sources, the company's current capacity contracts are sufficient for its presently existing generation needs. The current price forecast for the remainder of 2024 suggests natural gas prices are likely to average below $4 per decatherm. However, short-term price volatility can result from changes in either supply or demand. In conclusion, I respectfully request that the Commission find that DESC natural gas purchasing practices for electric generation were reasonable and prudent. This concludes my summary.
Thank you. And Dr. Fang, can you please state your full name for the record? And by whom are you employed and in what
Just
capacity?
a moment, Mr. Richardson. Dr. Fang, thank you. Your mic is now on.
Sorry. And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Black & Corporation as a managing director in the advisory and planning group.
And did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your direction 12 pages of direct testimony pre-filed on February 15th, 2024?
Yes, I did.
And if I asked you all the questions contained in your pre-filed direct testimony here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Chair Belzer, I move that the pre-filed direct testimony of Dr. Fang be entered into the record as given orally from the stand.
Dr. Fang's pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given from the stand.
And Dr. Fang, did your pre-filed direct testimony include exhibits labeled HF1 and HF2?
Yes.
And Chair Belzer, I move that exhibits HF1 and HF2 be entered into the record as the next composite hearing exhibit.
Dr. Fang's exhibits HF1 and HF2 will be a composite exhibit marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 5 and received into the evidence of this case.
Thank you. And Dr. Fang, did you prepare a summary of your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes.
Can you please present that summary to the commission?
Yes. Good morning, Chairperson and members of the commission. My name is Hua Fang, and I'm employed by Blackfish Corporation as managing director. In compliance with order number 2022-860 in docket number 2022-259-E, Dominion Energy South Carolina engaged Black & Veatch to reevaluate the feasibility, cost, and benefits to the company's customers associated with a natural gas financial hedging program for fuel costs for electric generation. My testimony presents the results of this independent evaluation, which is attached to my testimony. The report provides an overview of natural gas hedging in general, reviews Dominion Energy's current natural gas procurement practice for electric generation, evaluates Dominion Energy's current supply costs, and provides an illustrative assessment of different hedging strategies under different price scenarios. The report notes that the potential impacts on Dominion Energy's customer costs from various financial hedging instruments under alternative price scenarios said that all financial instruments could add net cost that would ultimately have to be paid by the company's customers. And the report evaluates the historical hedging performance of different natural gas and electric utilities around the country. My analysis finds that the use of financial hedges could produce significant losses under certain market conditions, and the company's customers would have to ultimately pay for those potential losses if a financial hedging is implemented. As a result of my analysis, Black & Veatch recommends that the company continues its existing business practice of natural and physical hedging, market purchases for power, and implementation of customer bill rate resets on an annual basis. These existing practices serve to control the cost level and mitigate exposure to high price risk and provide the company customers with a more stable and predictable pricing structure that address any short-term fluctuations in the natural gas markets. This concludes my summary.
Thank you, Chair Belzer. Mr. Shin, Ms. Jackson, and Dr. Fang are available for questions from CMC Steel and the members of the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. CMC Steel, any questions?
Nothing from CMC Steel.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions for this panel? Vice Chair Powers.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Jackson. Good morning.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
I'm not going to ask you about hedging.
Thank you.
Could you, you mentioned in your testimony just now about storage levels. Were you talking about on a national basis, or has Dominion changed their storage levels, or exactly? Could you explain that a little more?
Yes, sir. I was talking about the 5-year national storage levels. That typically impacts natural gas prices because depending on where we sit at on a national level, looking at the last 5 years can have an impact to prices for natural gas.
Okay, and then there has been an increase in production recently.
Yes, sir. And with cooler than normal temperatures in the summer and the warmer than normal temperatures we've experienced in the winter, that led us to having above average storage levels when compared to the last 5 years.
Is there any unusual expense to having high storage levels?
No, sir. We pay for a reservation fee for the amount of capacity we have in storage. We pay a volumetric surcharge as we inject and withdraw. So those charges, the reservation fees are going to be there no matter what the storage level.
So, yeah, I mean, I shop at Costco sometimes, end up with a 40-pound thing of goldfish. You think it's a good thing to keep a lot of storage?
I think storage helps us with reliability to ensure in the event we do have disruptions or there are higher than normal prices in the market, it gives us an alternative to help mitigate price volatility for our customers.
Okay. All right. Let me switch over. Shin, I got one question. You said in some of your testimony that 2023 the coal prices were 72, 70 something dollars, and that their forecast for 2024 was 110 bucks a ton. Is that correct?
The $100 a ton figure was probably going to be a delivered cost. The 70 something dollar a ton was just a FOB cost at the mine.
What would be the delivery cost if it was on $70? I mean,
Freight rates are usually low to mid 20s for most. So that's what you could add to an FOB cost at the mine.
well, again, as far as storage, are you able to store sufficient amounts to buy at the lower price?
Our storage consists mainly on our stockpiles that we have at the power plants. And we consistently try and keep those at the levels, the 680,000 tons approximately over a 12-month period average. And that's our goal.
Okay. And there's no unusual storage costs in having it there on site, is there?
No, sir, none other than the cost of capital after you purchase it and get it on the ground.
Okay. Thank you, sir. That's all I have.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Caston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since the subject's breached, now, thinking about that, though, relative to hedging versus anything else, do you believe the utility is best qualified to use methods it deems best in purchasing gas or any other fuel?
I think that, especially with this panel with Michael Shen and myself, we've been purchasing fuels for a long time. And so we do our absolute best to ensure reliability at an affordable cost to our customers based on that experience.
Was that a yes or?
Yes,
it's
sir,
not
it would
a
be a
loaded
yes.
question.
Yes.
Do hearings such as this evaluate or should evaluate the reasonableness, prudency of the utilities' decisions?
Yes, sir. I believe they do.
Thank you. And I truly wasn't going to breach that subject, but thank you.
Commissioner Justin Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Fang, could you tell me whether or not you have any published academic articles?
I have some publications that were internally released by Black & Veatch, and I also make presentations at seminars and was published in some of the conference proceedings.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Dr. Fang, can you speak into the mic a little bit more? It's a little difficult to hear you. Thank you. I apologize for interrupting.
Sorry.
I know you've testified before the commission before, but I've seen your name in some academic articles as well. So I just want to make sure we were talking about, that I put your name with the names on some of the papers I read. So I appreciate your testimony here today. Mr. Shen, my question for you is really more about the psychology of some of the decisions you make when you're purchasing fuel, just to unpack that a little bit. And the reason I'm asking this question is that I know, and I hope you're not offended when I call you all professional witnesses, but you all are pretty well versed and able to give us the information we need to reach a decision. But sometimes that information may be a bit over the average person's head. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say so.
So just thinking about the average person right now that may be watching this or may not be watching this, quite frankly, could you go into, as the business leader in your division, what your ultimate outcome or goal is when you're looking at purchasing fuel?
Yes, sir. Be glad to. There's a lot of things. Number one, being able to maintain a reliable inventory. at an affordable cost and operational concerns of the plant. So the inventory, when we go out for purchases, we go out and do a solicitation. So we send out requests for proposals to all of the vendors that we use or could provide our type of coal that we use, which is primarily Central Appalachian coal, 12,500 mid-sulfur. We do burn some Northern App coal in primarily mined in the Pennsylvania area, and we don't burn any of the Illinois Basin coal. That's a little bit further out west. So we send out that solicitation, we get those bids back, and it contains pricing, quality. Although our specification that we put out is a 12,500 BTU per pound, which ultimately that's what the plants in general burn. I mean, they're interested in the heat that is contained into that fuel, not necessarily the fuel itself, but what it can get out of it. So we get back all kinds of different proposals, different ash levels, different sulfur levels, different BTU levels. So we take all of those in, we put them in our spreadsheet that has calculations in it to compare them all together to get down to a delivered cost per million BTU with adjustments for sulfur, with adjustments for ash, additional ash, and those sorts of things. And then we take, if the one, to give you an example, let's say you have a producer that might bid you a 12,000 or a 13,000 BTU coal, which is very competitive on a cost per million BTU basis. But if the sulfur level is at a point where you just can't use it for some reason, you've already bought enough Northern App, or it doesn't meet the fusion specs of a different plant, ash fusion specs inside the boiler, then you just can't use it. So you would have to go to the next best one that fits what you need at the time that you're purchasing the coal for. And that's primarily, what we do is we take all of these in, keeping in mind inventory levels. Sometimes we might purchase more spot coal or purchase less spot coal, just dependent on the weather, natural gas prices, and all of these other things that come into play as well.
I'm sorry. How do you weigh your decisions against the legal requirement to be reasonable and prudent? How are you making that determination beforehand, or is it? How do you get there? Because I would imagine that would be the goal. And correct me if I'm wrong. I would imagine that would be at the top of your mind well before you get into this proceeding.
Yes, sir. Well, just like we talked about a little bit earlier, I mean, we take into account what we need and when we need it. So, for instance, if we're in the middle of the winter burn and it's higher, like the summer burn and the winter burn are usually our highest times. If the market is high during those periods and we feel like we can maybe get a better deal whenever the market goes down in the spring or the fall, then we might wait to do our purchases then. But if...
Okay, I want to slow you down a little bit. So a decision like that, would that result in potential savings for ratepayers if you make a decision to wait to buy at a lower period or at a time when your coal, your fuel, whatever it may be, is lower on the market compared to buying at a higher price point?
Yes, typically prices in less needed times, like the spring and the fall, your prices go down, maybe similar to natural gas in non-peak periods.
Okay, keep going. I just wanted to make sure that point was fleshed out.
Okay. But and also inventory-wise, if let's say our fuel forecasts were less than what we thought, or possibly even more than what we thought, we keep the amount of inventory that we need on hand to have a reliable supply in mind as well. So if for some reason our burn wasn't as much as we thought, we won't buy any spot coal. You know, we manage that inventory at a level to where we think, you know, we can stay reliable.
A couple more questions for you. So how would you define reliability?
For us is, well, for my department, I should say, reliability for us is having a quality of fuel that our power plants can use, can get load off of, and try and maintain, on average, that 45-day supply.
What is load?
The net capacity rating of the unit.
How would you define affordability?
Affordability, I would define as, at least in my department, looking at what we say we're going to consume, is being able, or the most competitive price with the fuel we need and the quality we need.
Okay, and how would you define a competitive price?
Like I mentioned earlier, we take out solicitations and we document those, what we get back via spreadsheet.
And so, needless to say, it seems as if there's a lot of thought put into the decisions that you all make to ensure that you're meeting your goals of reliability and affordability.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a margin for error? Not to say that you or your company has made any mistakes, but is there any point in time that maybe you don't hit the target the way that you anticipated? And if that happens, what do you do?
Well, certainly at the time, with the information that we have in front of us, certainly feel like we make the best decision we can at the time. That's not to say a month down the line, something changes and all of a sudden, you know, maybe the prices went down or what have you, or another supply came available that would have offered you a better opportunity. But certainly at the time we make the decisions, we feel like those are the best decisions to make.
And Commissioner Williams, if I can add to that, that's what prudency is based on, is the best decision given the information we have at that point in time. We also have the opportunity through the Economic Resource Commitment Group where they're looking at our daily needs and they're comparing the cost of coal that we have, the cost of natural gas, the cost of purchase power, and even the cost of oil depending on the time of year, where they can economically dispatch the most affordable fuel for those plants that are going to be utilized for that day.
Thank you, ma'am. You're going through my examination, so that was going to be my next question. Reasonableness and prudency takes into account a certain margin for error. Wouldn't you agree?
I think that...
Because it's not perfection.
No, it's not perfection, but I think you have to make a decision based on the information you have available at that time. So as Mr. Shin was saying, things change very rapidly in the fuel markets. So I think that's why it's important that we have the ability to compare on a daily basis what is the most affordable fuel that we can utilize within the operating parameters of the units we plan to dispatch. Mm-hmm. So as Mr. Shin was referring to, it depends also on what type of quality of coal that plant may need to utilize based on the coal they already have ready to dispatch. It also is dependent upon the delivered price of coal also. And we compare that to natural gas, purchase power, and even fuel oil, depending on that time of the period of the year.
Right, right. And so with all of that in mind, everything that you just listed, you all do and do it well. If the next month something that's unforeseen occurs and prices go through the roof, that doesn't necessarily mean that the decision you made last month was not a prudent or reasonable decision.
Correct, because we made the best decision we had given the data we had at that time. We can't anticipate what prices will do in the future. If that were true, I wouldn't be here. I've been asked that several times over my career. Why didn't you see this coming? And I wish I could predict when some of these fluctuations occur, but it's very difficult to do so.
Right. But based on all those tools that you have, it seems like that's what you're trying to do to the best of your ability. I don't want to project or put words in your mouth, but that's what it seems like you're trying to do.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Fang, I didn't mean to leave you out, so if you have any more to add to that, I would love to hear it.
Yes, and I think then people always say that hindsight's 20/20. So when you look at a decision that you have made earlier, things could happen both ways. It could be a really good decision, and it could be turn out to be a not so good decision. I think I would agree with what Rose and Shane had said earlier, is that the process needs to come really at the time that you need to make the decision using the best information that's available to you. And I think then as try to execute it in the most transparent and fair way, that will lead to a decision that's really prudent and reasonable, turns out to be reasonable. And I think then you just based on the information you gather and accumulate over time, you try to improve the process and try to see if, what level of correlations different has with either the load, the price, or the potential volatility levels. I think then try your best to mitigate with the tools you have available to you.
Thank you, Dr. Fang. Now, there's nothing in this process that you know of that hinders your ability to make the best decision at the time. Say, like a pre-existing commission order or any regulatory obstacle that would prevent you to make the best decision that you believe needs to be made at the time.
No, sir, I would say that we have an obligation to make the best decision at the time in order to meet the prudency standard.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Thomas?
Thank you. So, Mr. Shin, you mentioned in your testimony that one of the coal suppliers failed to supply the amount that was supposed to under the contract, and that that's in front of the American Arbitration Association. And my guess is you can't say anything else about it, or you don't know anything else about it. But in case you can, do you have an update on that?
Yes, sir. Well, the update certainly I can provide is we always take the opportunity to try and make sure when we have a situation like this, we try and protect our customers as much as we can by going through this process. But what I can tell you is it goes before the arbitration board in October. It'll be here in Columbia. And most of the information, the discovery has already been done and has gone back and forth. That's really all I can say. And if you have a specific question, I can certainly try and.
No, that's
okay.
Good. I appreciate it. So, Ms. Jackson, you mentioned in your testimony that that the company does not have permission from the commission to enter into financial hedges. So, is that something that you think is required before you get into a hedging program?
We had operated a hedging program for the LDC side, and we agreed to suspend that hedging program, but that hedging program had been approved by the commission. So therefore, we would request that the commission approve any type of financial hedges that we would enter into, because it's something that we haven't done in the past for the power generation side of the house.
All right, and you are not asking for that permission, correct?
No, sir, we are not.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dr. Fang, in connection with talking about hedging, in your testimony, you mentioned in several places that all financial instruments could add costs that would ultimately be paid by customers. I'm looking specifically at page 9 of your testimony, and if you look at page 11, again, basically the same thing. Your lines 7 through 10, the risks and unfavorable outcomes. It's you know, you go over it there, and then you have an exhibit, and it's labeled as Table 2-1, and you talk about the hedging programs of other utility companies, and you have a number of places there where you put some numbers out there. The very first one being Virginia Electric Power, and there's a number in there of $22.5 million. It's a pretty big number in my opinion. And you look at the next page, Georgia Power Company, see a number of $638 million, and then interest expense on that of $81 million. Pretty big numbers. And then on the next page, talk about the Florida Gulf Power Company as well as some others. And I see a $6 billion number. That's a really big number. And 1.5 billion and 421 million and 4 billion, 170 million. So, I mean, they're big numbers. And, it's good information, I believe, for all of us to have and be aware of. Appreciate that. And then if you go back to at the top, it says it's page 37 of 51, and there's a chart at the bottom of that page. And in that one, you're talking about the Henry Hub prices, and it starts at 2015 and projected out through 2050. I know the Henry Hub prices are different from the NYMEX that Ms. Jackson was talking about, but I'm just looking at 2024. It looks to me like that's about $2.75 approximately for 2024.
Right.
And then if you go all the way out to 2050, it looks to me like it's approximately $5.75. Does that sound about right to you?
Yes.
And it seems to me that that'd be pretty close to just kind of normal inflation. If you think of inflation as maybe 3% or so, that seems to me that that's just kind of in line with inflation. Is this taking into account inflation, or is this just taking it? What is this taking into account, I guess is what I'm asking.
The projections, I would just, essentially when we're talking about the chart we had listed under figure 5-9, this is projected Henry Hub price that takes into account an assumption including how much gas will be produced at what cost, how much gas will be exported from the U.S., as well as how much gas will be used in power generation. I think the key drivers of those will be the what we put into the long-term projection. And we also, because we need to have some level of understanding about the basic kind of developments in the market in long term for some of the long-term planning purposes. But I would have to say that if you see the projection, we update that model every year. I think you would see our price level goes up and down based on what happens and what our best kind of predictions of futures are. We will try to incorporate as much information as we have available and try to put in some what we call business judgment calls in terms of what could happen. But I think I'm the first to admit that this is no way a certain kind of indication of what's going to happen in the market in the future.
Okay. But basically, I guess to summarize your report and your testimony, you are not encouraging the company to begin to get into some sort of hedging program for natural gas.
That would be correct. I think this, with the level of uncertainties of some of the assumptions, I think the market fluctuations may be a little bit unpredictable and beyond the company's control. So if the company right now is implementing some practices that try to mitigate and protect against the really high price spikes, as well try to really even out the customer bills fluctuations month over month on an annual basis, I think that's maybe provide sufficient level of protection at the time, so that we would not recommend that they implement any financial hedging program. As you see from the reviews of other utilities, the consequence could be you could benefit, but there's a huge potential for significant add-on costs to customers.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioners. Anything further for this panel? Commissioner Williams?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Jackson, I want to be clear about how you feel not the customers, but the company has, or what level of authority the company has to make decisions to run their business. And specifically, we're talking about hedging, or I'm talking about hedging, and I'm not really interested in the prudency or reasonableness of hedging. I'm indifferent to that at this point. I'm talking about the decision to enter into a hedging contract or not. So do you take the position that before the company can enter into a hedging contract that they must petition the commission for permission to do that?
That is the route we would take, because under the LDC hedging program, which is the only hedging program this company has operated, we agreed to suspend that hedging program in conjunction with ORS and the commission. Therefore, before we enter into any type of financial hedging program, we would come before this commission and request that we could start financial hedging again.
Right, but that's just the way you would do it. That's the way that's not necessarily the way it has to be. That's just what you would do based on your understanding of that order.
I would do that out of respect for the counterparties that were involved in that decision, ORS and the commission at that time.
Okay, so can we walk through it? How would that arise if you felt like, or the company felt like, a hedging program should be initiated again? What would happen?
We could bring it up in this fuel proceeding. We could bring it up in the PGA proceeding. I would have to discuss it with our attorneys to find out if there's a different venue for that. But certainly in those two that we come before you on an annual basis, that would be an appropriate forum for us to discuss financial hedging, as we have done so.
Okay. So if you thought it was appropriate, that's what you would do?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to clarify that. And the reason why is I don't want you or the company to feel like there are any restraints or obstacles for you all to make the best decisions you need to make at the time. And I don't know whether or not hedging would work or whether it wouldn't work, but I don't want it to be a situation where you didn't do something because of some pre-existing agreement or order that prevented that action from taking place. Does that make sense?
As I stated, out of respect for the counterparties that were involved in that decision, we would come before ORS and the commission before we entered into any financial hedging, because we agreed to suspend that program.
Right.
And it was because of the losses incurred in that program.
Right. So.
And that is a standing order that this commission issued.
Yeah, I read it. What concerns me though, we are somewhat sort of tied into the decision to enter, it seems at least, a hedging program. So, for example, as opposed to you just making that decision because it's the best course of action as the utility, we're sort of involved in that because you would come back before us, and I guess the Office of Regulatory Staff, I don't know if anyone else was a party to that order. I can't remember, but it seems like we're sort of tied to that decision. Do you see it that way?
Well, I would see that that would be a part of our annual prudence as well. So you're tied to that on an annual basis. So that's where I would think that that decision would be made. I guess I'm not clearly understanding the question.
Well, we don't determine the type of coal that you purchase or oil that you purchase. Like, I couldn't tell you about the sulfur content of coal or the burn rate or anything like that. That's not my world. I'm not looking at the ticker. But when you come before us and you present the decisions that you've already made, we determine whether or not those decisions are reasonable and prudent. And so if there's a determination to be made as to whether or not, and again, hedging is just the example. So I'm not talking about hedging's reasonableness or prudent. I'm just talking about making a decision. So it concerns me a little bit if any decision that you all need to make to run your business in the best way possible is tied to the commission. It concerns me because it almost feels like there's a bit of an obstacle that you couldn't make the decision as soon as you felt as if the decision needed to be made, that you could make it, as opposed to having to file a petition, have a hearing, and go through this process before you can actually make that decision.
I think that would be the course of action that the company would take based on what has happened in the past related to a financial hedging program.
Okay.
And it goes back into the question of prudency. We currently employ all the different options that Dr. Fang has gone over in her report, and she encourages us to continue to do that. But in the event we make the decision to engage in financial hedging, I think that is something we all need to discuss and understand the benefits and the cost, because it is not about beating the market. And with any financial hedging program, there will be cost. So I think we need to take into account what those costs are and make sure we're all on the same page of what benefits and costs are involved in a financial hedging program. But once again, hedging is not beating the market. And I have been asked several times about that. So,
Madam Chair, if Commissioner Williams is okay.
I'm not sure that he's through yet.
Well, go ahead. I'm thinking.
Well, that's,
go right ahead.
That's
I yield
all I
to
was
you.
going to do.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Is based on what you just said, that, you know, because of the prior order and then it sounded like because, you know, it would be a big decision and, you know, it's not guaranteeing anything, you know, we all need to get together and discuss that.
yes, sir.
Is when I'm thinking, at least me, thinking in terms of reasonableness, prudency, how Dominion runs their business, I don't want to tell you how to run your business. Just want you to comply with the laws, regulations. So relative to, I guess, that response to Commissioner Williams' question, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to. I'm not sure how to respond to that. If Dominion, for example, if Dominion had the opportunity, freedom, or if you clearly understood you had the freedom to make these kind of whatever decisions like this you need to make that you thought was in the best interest of the customer and the company, would Dominion have a problem with that?
I guess, Commissioner Caston, when we purchase our fuel on an annual basis, we are taking into account that prudency standard. And we are looking at what is the most reliable and affordable purchase for our customers. Financial hedging is another tool that can be utilized. However, that tool comes with cost. And what we've been able to do is to employ other options or other tools, if you will, that have no cost or no incremental cost. And those tools help mitigate volatility to our customers. But it was an unusual situation where we came before this commission together with the ORS, and the commission approved suspension of a financial hedging program for the LDC. And there was a lot of discussion. There was a lot of going back and forth related to that order and to that decision. So once again, I want to make sure that we are all on the same page with regards to what financial hedging can do and the fact that that is just another tool, but that tool does come with cost. And I want this commission and ORS and other members in our company to understand what those costs are, and that financial hedging does not mean that we can beat the market.
Commissioner Williams, may I ask one more question?
Yeah, sure. Go right ahead.
And you may not know the answer to this. With the order that suspended the hedging, how did the hedging come about to start with? Was that by order, or was that just something that's kind of, yeah. What's the genesis?
I know it started at South Carolina Pipeline Corporation. I would have to go back and look at the original orders, but I know that the program was discussed. I even know that there were ex parte briefings with the consultant that we used at Case & Company. So I would have to, I apologize, I have to go back and look at those orders because that occurred back in the early 90s.
No need to apologize. That was a tough question. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Caston. So just to be clear, Ms. Jackson, I'm not saying that hedging can beat the market. All I want to do is put every tool that's available to you and the company in your toolbox and give you the freedom to use it without getting permission from the commission. That's what I'm attempting to do. And what I'm hearing is that hedging has a prior, at least the way you're interpreting that order, that hedging is a tool that needs prior authorization, or you would like prior authorization or some discussion, at least, between the parties to that order before that tool is even considered. Seemingly that's what I'm hearing.
Yes, sir, I would agree with that because I was involved in that docket where we suspended hedging, and I was involved in the discussions prior to that decision being made. And I think it is critical that we all are on the same page before we engage in financial hedging again. Because while you may say, I don't think financial hedging is about beating the market, hindsight is 20/20, and that tends to be the prudency standard that some may put us under in trying to make those decisions. And you know, when you look at how our financial hedging program for the LDC performed, it did provide price volatility mitigation. However, when you looked at the annual cost, as was mentioned in some of the annual costs for these programs that Dr. Fang and her team evaluated, that's why ORS and the commission and our company was concerned is the amount of cost associated with that tool. So therefore, we have agreed to utilize these other tools. But there was a lot of discussion, and there was even discussion of the prudency associated with that program. So that is my concern, is that we're all on the same page with regards to financial hedging. It wasn't a quick decision to suspend the financial hedging program, and I don't think it should be a quick decision to implement a financial hedging program, as Dr. Fang's report suggests.
Right. And you understand that I'm not suggesting what you do, whether you implement or not. I just want you to have the ability to do it without that prior authorization. What you decide to do is up to you. And then on that annual basis, we can look and see whether or not we believe it meets the reasonableness and prudency prudency standard, because it almost seems as if, and correct me if I'm wrong, would you think or would you interpret a decision to rescind that order as some level of approval of the prudency of hedging? If that order was rescinded, you wouldn't interpret that as a approval of the reasonableness and prudency of a hedging program, would you?
Commissioner Williams, I would say that was be more of a legal decision, and I can't respond. I can't answer to that. I just know that that order exists today, and I think it's very important. While I understand what you're saying, that you don't make the decisions for the company, you do make the decisions about prudency. And so that's why I think it's very important that we all get on the same page before we implement any type of financial hedging program.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Vice Chair Powers?
Thank you. Ms. Jackson, we're back to hedging. When you talk about prudency, I guess I see our role as a review as to whether or not the company's been prudent. And just as Commissioner Williams seems to be thinking, I just think, and maybe I misunderstand you talk about not being able to beat the market with it, but I just have a thought of the right thing coming along, Dominion being able to pull the trigger without having to come to us, because if you come to us, you may lose that deal. And I guess that's how I interpret some of the hedging thing, and I'm sure that's a major misunderstanding on my part.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Powers, we have that ability today, and we have employed that tool where we could lock in to either a fixed price or an index price for physical purchases of natural gas, and we have done so in the past. When we compare the cost of coal to the cost of natural gas or the cost of purchase power, the Economic Resource Commitment Group has come back to our team and said, we want to lock in X volumes of natural gas at this price or at this index, and we've done so. However, with that, you have to balance all of the penalties associated with delivery of that gas in the event we have an operational flow order or in the event that the plant goes down. So we try to mitigate that by locking into a volume that is below half of the expected needs of power generation. But when you're talking about financial hedging, there is a cost to enter into those financial instruments that Dr. Fang listed in her report. And so when you talk about that, not only are you looking at the commodity cost that you're locking into, but you're also looking at the cost of those instruments, the cost of the program that will determine when is the best available time to lock into those prices. That was the concerns that were raised related to the LDC financial hedging program. At the time that program was suspended, we had incurred roughly $58 million of cost.
Well, you had some bad luck with the pricing.
It wasn't bad luck. It was just that we mitigated the volatility of those prices to our customers, but the mitigation of that volatility came with a cost.
Okay. But what you're telling me is through the programs you're using now and through your resources, you can pull the trigger if you need to.
Yes, sir, on a physical basis.
That's what I was concerned with. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioners, anything further? Mr. Richardson, any redirect?
No to redirect at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your appearance and your testimonies today. We appreciate you being here, and you may stand down. We've been going for a little while. It's 11:33 on my cell phone, so let's take about a 12-minute break till 11:45. 11:45. Good morning still, and welcome back to the Public Service Commission as we continue in the hearing in docket number 2024-2-E. We have all commissioners that were present at the beginning of the hearing are back in the hearing room. Mr. Richardson, you look like you're ready to go.
Thank you, Chair Belzer. The company calls this final panel consisting of Mr. James Neely and Mr. Jonathan Farley.
Ms. Wise?
Would you please raise your right hands? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you'll give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Gentlemen, if you don't mind, or Mr. Neely, you mind your microphone there? Thank you. Mr. Neely, can you please state your full name for the record?
James W. Neely.
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Dominion Energy Services as an energy market strategic advisor for Dominion Energy South Carolina.
And did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your direction 22 pages of direct testimony pre-filed on February 15th, 2024?
Yes, I did.
And if I asked you all the questions contained in your pre-filed direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Chair Belzer, I move that Mr. Neely's pre-filed direct testimony be entered into the record as given orally from the stand.
Mr. Neely's pre-filed direct testimony will be received into the record as if given from the stand.
Mr. Neely, did you prepare a summary of your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes, I did.
Could you please present that summary to the commission?
Yes. Good morning, Chair Belzer and members of the commission. The company calculated the value for each of the 11 components of value for distributed energy resource avoided costs contained in the commission-approved net energy metering methodology for the current period and for the value over the 20-year planning period. The methodology and specific values for each component are set forth in my testimony. The difference between the two values represent the future benefits of DER that are subject to recovery by the company in this proceeding. Using the net energy methodology results in a total value of NEM distributed energy resources of $0.03025 per kilowatt hour for the current period and $0.03681 per kilowatt hour for the 20-year value. The company respectfully requests that the Commission approve the calculation of the total value of net energy metering distributed energy resources as set forth in my direct testimony. This concludes my summary.
Thank you. And Mr. Farley, can you please please state your full name for the record?
Jonathan T. Farley.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
Dominion Energy Services as a regulatory analyst for Dominion Energy South Carolina.
And did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your direction 16 pages of corrected direct testimony pre-filed on February 29th, 2024?
Yes, I did.
And if I asked you all the questions contained in your pre-filed corrected direct testimony here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Chair Belzer, I move that the pre-filed corrected direct testimony of Mr. Farley be entered into the record as given orally from the stand.
Mr. Farley's pre-filed corrected direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given from the stand.
Thank you. And Mr. Farley, did your pre-filed corrected direct testimony include the exhibits labeled as corrected exhibits JTF-1 and JTF-2, exhibits JTF-3 through JTF-5, corrected exhibits JTF-6 and 7, JTF-8 and JTF-9, corrected exhibits JTF-10 and JTF-11, and JTF-12 through JTF-15?
Yes.
Chair Belzer, I move that the exhibits attached to Mr. Farley's pre-filed corrected direct testimony be entered into the record as the next composite hearing exhibit.
The exhibits accompanying Mr. Farley's corrected direct testimony, which includes corrected exhibits 1, 2, 6, 7, 10, and 11, the others being the original, will be a composite exhibit marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 6 and admitted into the evidence of this case.
Thank you. Mr. Farley, have you prepared a summary of your pre-filed corrected direct testimony?
Yes, I have.
Can you please present that summary to the commission?
Yes. Good morning, Chair Belzer, members of the commission. My corrected direct testimony provides the company's currently approved electric fuel factors, actual and projected data on base fuel costs, variable environmental and avoided capacity costs, and distributed energy resource avoided and incremental costs and collection for the period of January 1st, 2023 through April 30th, 2025. Also, my testimony provides the company's proposed base fuel, variable environmental and avoided capacity, DER avoided, DER incremental, and total fuel cost factors for retail electric customers for the period of May 2024 through April 2025. The company's proposed fuel factor changes will impact customer bills effective for all customer classes for bills rendered on and after the first billing cycle of May 2024 and continuing through the billing month of April 2025 as follows. For a DESC residential customer with a 1,000 kilowatt hour per month, the average monthly bill would decrease from $146.30 to $131.85, or 9.88%, inclusive of revenue taxes. For a DESC commercial customer with a 500 kVA demand using 150,000 kilowatts per month, the average monthly bill would decrease from $18,395 to $16,232, or 11.76%, inclusive of revenue taxes. And finally, for a DESC industrial customer with a 10,000 kilowatt demand using 6,570,000 kilowatt hours per month, a 90% load factor, the average monthly bill would decrease from $545,827 to $451,088, or 17.36%, inclusive of revenue taxes. The company respectfully requests that the Commission issue an order finding DESC's fuel purchasing practices, plant operations, and fuel inventory management were reasonable and prudent. This concludes the summary of my corrected direct testimony.
Thank you. And Mr. Farley, did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your direction 8 pages of rebuttal testimony pre-filed with the Commission on March 21st, 2024?
Yes, I did.
If I asked you all the questions contained in your pre-filed rebuttal testimony here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Chair Belzer, I move that the pre-filed rebuttal testimony of Mr. Farley be entered into the record as given orally from the stand.
Mr. Farley's pre-filed rebuttal testimony will be entered into the record as if given from the stand.
Mr. Farley, have you prepared a summary of your pre-filed rebuttal testimony?
Yes, I have.
Can you please present that summary to the Commission?
Yes. My rebuttal testimony responds to certain recommendations contained in the direct testimonies of ORS witnesses Gordon, Hyatt, and Thompson. While the company originally disagreed with ORS's recommended adjustments for lime expense at Williams Station and to incremental costs for the company's distributed energy resource program, the settlement agreement reached in this proceeding resolves the disputed issues outlined in my pre-filed rebuttal testimony, and the company fully supports the settlement agreement.
Thank you. Chair Belzer, Mr. Neely and Mr. Farley are available for questions from CMC Steel and the Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. CMC Steel, any questions?
Nothing from CMC Steel, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shishis. Good morning, gentlemen. I reckon I'm gonna start. I've been kind of quiet. And Mr. Farley, I think most of my questions are for you. And I recognize the settlement agreement has been filed and the company's position on that. I really just kind of want to talk about maybe the cause and going forward. And with regard to the distributed energy resource program incremental cost, you gave an explanation in your rebuttal about splitting the books, so to speak, or accounts when the merger took place. Is that correct? Is that a good
Yes,
assessment?
that's correct.
Okay. I reckon, but why did it take from March 2019 until this review period to catch that the regulatory reports were out of sync with the financial reports of the company?
Our regulatory reports, we live month to month in the current year, so when we're filing regulatory reports, we're looking at costs incurred for that month and not necessarily the full balance. There really is no explanation as to why it took so long. We caught it. We saw that our financial books showed a different value, is that $43,409 difference from our regulatory reports. And in order to correct the record, that's why we submitted we made the adjustment.
Okay, so this is traced back to that time when the account was split after the merger.
That's
Is that
correct.
So this isn't an issue that is likely to repeat. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. I also had a question with regard to the adjustment on the expense for lime at the Williams Station, and I'm looking at your rebuttal testimony on page 6. Specifically lines 18 through 20. And in that you stated the company received the lime associated with its transactions for Williams Station in December 2020, which it consumed. Does that mean that amount of lime was consumed in December 2020, or it was consumed at sometime afterwards?
Yes, ma'am, that lime was used in December 2020 at Williams Station.
Okay, but why was the expense not recorded until almost 2.5 years later?
So it was during the transition from PeopleSoft to SAP, our accounting software.
Okay.
The expense was not recorded, nor was the bill paid to the vendor, and we didn't hear from the vendor regarding the outstanding bill, and so it just wasn't captured at the time.
Okay. It was just a mistake.
Yes, ma'am.
And those happen from time to time, is that correct?
That is correct.
I mean, goodness knows I make enough of them. So. Okay. I appreciate that clarification. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioners? No questions? Vice Chair Powers?
That was my question.
Oh, okay. Mr. Richardson, any redirect?
No redirect at this time, and this concludes the company's case, and the company appreciates the opportunity to be before the commission today.
Okay, just a second before you leave the podium. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your testimony and your appearances here today, and you may stand down.
Thank you.
Parties, I know we talked about the settlement agreement earlier and that there was going to be another one filed with a correction to a Scrivener's error. I would like to hold a late filed exhibit for that corrected version. That'll be hearing exhibit number 7, and it's just to receive the corrected settlement agreement correcting that Scrivener's error.
Thank you.
Any objection? Okay, hearing none.
Amen.
That'll be hearing exhibit number 7, marked for identification and also admitted into the record. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Richardson.
Thank you.
No witnesses from either CMC Steel or South Carolina Energy Users, is that correct?
That's correct.
So we'll now recognize ORS.
Madam Chair, ORS calls Mr. Rowland and Mr. Gordon for its first panel.
Okay, Mr. Rowland and Mr. Gordon. Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Madam Court Reporter.
Would you please raise your right hands to be sworn? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you'll give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Thank you.
Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon, I'll begin with you. Please state your name for the record.
Jeffrey Gordon.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by the Office of Regulatory Staff as a regulatory analyst.
Are you the same Mr. Gordon who pre-filed 8 pages of direct testimony in this case on March the 15th, 2024?
Yes, I am.
Do you have any changes, edits, or corrections to your pre-filed testimony?
No, I do not.
If I asked you the same questions today as those posed in your pre-filed direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Madam Chair, at this time, I would move that the pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Gordon be admitted into the record of this case as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Gordon's pre-filed direct testimony will be admitted into the record as if given from the stand.
Mr. Gordon, did you also cause to be filed with your direct testimony one exhibit marked as JAG-1?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes, edits, or corrections to your exhibit?
No, I do not.
Madam Chair, at this time, I would move that Mr. Gordon's exhibit JAG-1 be admitted into the record as the next hearing exhibit.
Mr. Gordon's exhibit JAG-1 will be marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 8 and received into the evidence of this case.
Mr. Gordon, did you prepare a summary of your testimony?
Yes.
Please present your summary to the commission.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. In order to ascertain the accuracy of and establish recommendations resulting from the examination of Dominion Energy South Carolina's Distributed Energy Resource Program, or DERP, and to promote the public interest, the Office of Regulatory Staff reviewed company data detailing actual and forecasted avoided and incremental costs for the period of January 2023 through December 2023, or the actual period, and January 2024 through April 2025, or the forecasted period. In the course of this investigation, ORS determined that the company's calculations include, in October of 2023, an adjustment of $43,409 brought forward from 2019. As these costs were incurred outside of the statutorily defined review period, ORS recommends that they be disallowed. Disallowance of these costs will reduce the cost to small and medium general service customers from approximately $7.65 per month to approximately $7.64 per month. Other than the October 2023 adjustment, ORS determined the company's calculations comply with Act 236 and with the Commission's orders in previous DERP-related proceedings and support the following annual proposed DERP charges: a residential charge of $12, a small and medium general service charge of $91.64, and a large general service charge of $1,200. Subsequent to the filing of my direct testimony, a settlement agreement was entered into between ORS, the company, and the South Carolina Energy Users Committee. The settlement agreement is the result of earnest and good faith negotiations. ORS respectfully requests that the Commission approve the stipulation as presented, and I support the settlement agreement. This concludes my summary.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Mr. Rowland, please state your name for the record.
Daniel J. Rowland.
And by whom are you employed in what capacity?
I'm employed by the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff as a senior auditor.
Are you the same Mr. Gordon who pre-filed 15 pages of direct testimony in this case on March the 15th, 2024?
I'm sorry, did you mean Mr. Rowland?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, I am.
Do you have any changes, edits, or corrections to your pre-filed testimony?
No, I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions today as those posed in your pre-filed direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Madam Chair, at this time, I would move that the pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Rowland be admitted into the record of this case as is given orally from the stand.
Mr. Rowland's pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given from the stand.
Mr. Rowland, did you also cause to be filed with your direct testimony 7 exhibits marked as DJR-1 through 7?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes, edits, or corrections to your exhibits?
No, I do not.
Madam Chair, at this time, I would move that Mr. Rowland's exhibits DJR-1 through 7 be admitted into the record as the next composite hearing exhibit.
Mr. Rowland's exhibits DJR-1 through DJR-7 will be a composite exhibit marked for identification as hearing exhibit 9 and received into the evidence of this case.
Mr. Rowland, did you prepare a summary of your direct testimony?
Yes, I did.
Please present your summary to the Commission.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. The purpose of my direct testimony is to explain the scope of ORS's examination of Dominion Energy South Carolina's books and records as they pertain to the company's operation of the fuel adjustment clause in the current filing, and to present the results of ORS's examination. ORS has examined and verified the monthly over-under recovery calculation and balances as recorded by the company for the 12-month review period that ended December 2023. My direct testimony also explains the 7 exhibits that I sponsor for this hearing, detailing these calculations. Based on ORS's review, ORS agrees with the balances and adjustments for base fuel and DERP avoided cost as put forth by the company for the 12-month review period that ended December 2023. However, based upon the testimony of ORS Witness Hyatt and ORS Witness Gordon, ORS recommends certain adjustments and different balances for environmental and avoided capacity and DERP incremental cost for the 12-month review period ended December 2023, compared to the balances proposed by the company. Subsequent to the filing of my direct testimony, a settlement agreement was entered into between ORS, the company, and the South Carolina Energy Users Committee. The settlement agreement is the result of earnest and good faith negotiations. ORS believes the settlement agreement is in the public interest of South Carolina and respectfully requests that the Commission approve the stipulation as presented, and I support the settlement agreement. This concludes my summary.
Thank you, Mr. Rowland. Mr. Gordon and Mr. Rowland, please answer any questions that CMC or the commissioners may have.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. CMC Steele, any questions?
Nothing from CMC Steel.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions for this panel? Hearing none. I suspect there's no redirect. Gentlemen, thank you for your appearance here this morning and your testimony. You may stand down. Thank you. ORS, Ms. Murphy?
Yeah, Madam Chair, ORS would like to call up Mr. Hyatt and Mr. Thompson to the stand.
Would you please raise your right hands? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you'll give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Thompson, we'll begin with you. Can you please state your full name for the record?
Samari Thompson.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by the Office of Regulatory Staff as a regulatory analyst.
And are you the same Amari Thompson who pre-filed 9 pages of direct testimony in this case on March 15th, 2024?
Yes.
Do you have any changes, edits, or corrections to your pre-filed testimony?
No, I do not.
If I asked you the same questions today as those posed in your pre-filed direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Madam Chair, at this time, I would move that the pre-filed direct testimony of Amari Thompson be admitted into the record of this case as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Thompson's pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given from the stand.
Mr. Thompson, did you also cause to be filed with your direct testimony 8 exhibits marked as ORT-1 through ORT-8?
Yes.
Do you have any changes, edits, or corrections to your exhibits?
No, I do not.
Madam Chair, at this time, I would move that Mr. Thompson's exhibits ORT-1 through ORT-8 be admitted into the record as the next composite hearing exhibit.
Mr. Thompson's exhibits ORT-1 through ORT-8 will be a composite exhibit marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 10 and received into the evidence of this case.
Mr. Thompson, did you prepare a summary of your direct testimony?
Yes, I did.
Please present your summary to the commission.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and members of the Commission. The purpose of my direct testimony is to set forth ORS's recommendations resulting from ORS's examination and review of Dominion Energy South Carolina's power plant operations used in the generation of electricity to meet the company's retail customer requirements during the review period. In preparation for this proceeding, ORS examined various fuel and performance documents related to the company's electric generation and power plant outage and maintenance activities. ORS analyzed the company's monthly fuel reports, including power plant performance data, unit outages, heat rate data, and generation statistics. ORS also monitored electric generation statistics through industry and governmental publications. ORS virtually attended the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's 2022 annual assessment meeting for the Virgil C. Summer Nuclear Station held on May 25, 2023. Additionally, ORS met with company personnel from various departments to discuss and review the company's electric generation, power plant outages, maintenance activities, fleet performance, and future challenges and concerns. Based on ORS's review of the company's operation of its generation facilities during the actual period, ORS determined that the company made reasonable efforts to maximize unit availability and minimize fuel costs. ORS found the company's plant outages to be reasonable based on ORS's review of the outage data from the actual period, forecasted outage data from docket number 2023-2-E, historical outage data from previous annual fuel proceedings, and industry experience. ORS also found the company's maintenance schedules and projected performance data for its power plants for the estimated period and the forecasted period to be reasonable. Regarding power plant outages, D rates not completed as of December 31st, 2023, and plant outages D rates were final reports or investigations as company, contractor, government reports or otherwise are not available, ORS respectfully requests the right to review the reasonableness of the plant outages, D rates, and their associated costs during the review period at such time as when the outages, D rates are completed and when the reports become available. Additionally, ORS provided some recommendations regarding future reporting requirements that the company has agreed to per the rebuttal testimony of company witness Farley and the settlement agreement. Subsequent to the filing of my direct testimony, a settlement agreement was entered into between the ORS, the company, and the South Carolina Energy Users Committee in this proceeding. The settlement agreement is the result of earnest, good faith, and complex negotiations between stakeholders with diverse interests. I respectfully request that the Commission approve the stipulation as presented, and I support the settlement agreement. This concludes my summary.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Hyatt, please state your name and occupation.
My name is Donald Shane Hyatt. I'm employed by the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff as a regulatory analyst.
Are you the same Shane Hyatt who pre-filed 10 pages of direct testimony in this case on March 15th, 2024?
Yes, I am.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your pre-filed direct testimony?
No, I do not.
Madam Chair, ORS asks that the pre-filed direct testimony of Shane Hyatt be entered into the record of this case as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Hyatt's pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given from the stand.
Mr. Hyatt, did you also prepare 5 exhibits labeled DSH-1 through DSH-5 as part of this proceeding?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any corrections, additions, or deletions to your pre-filed exhibits?
No, I do not.
Madam Chair, at this time, I would move that Mr. Hyatt's exhibits DSH-1 through DSH-5 be admitted into the record as the next composite hearing exhibit.
Mr. Hyatt's exhibits accompanying his pre-filed testimony and marked as DSH-1 through DSH-5 will be a composite exhibit marked for identification as hearing exhibit 11 and received into the evidence of this case.
Mr. Hyatt, did you prepare a summary of your direct testimony?
Yes, I did.
Please present your summary to the commission.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. My testimony sets forth ORS's findings and recommendations resulting from our examination of Dominion Energy South Carolina's fuel expenses used in the generation of electricity to meet its retail customers' requirements. ORS examined various fuel-related documents that address the company's fuel, environmental, and purchase power expenses for the actual, estimated, and forecasted periods. ORS analyzed the company's monthly fuel reports and examined the company's contracts for nuclear fuel, coal, natural gas, fuel oil, transportation, environmental reagents, purchase power, and the changes related to fuel contracts. ORS also evaluated the company's policies and procedures for fuel procurement, transportation, and any changes related to its policies and procedures. Additionally, ORS utilizes industry and government publications to monitor current market conditions and trends for the nuclear, coal, natural gas, transportation, and renewable industries. ORS also met virtually with company personnel from various departments as part of its review. ORS reviewed the company's evaluation of the feasibility, costs, and its benefits to its customers of a natural gas hedging program as directed by the Commission Order in number 2022-860. Based on its review, ORS submits that the company's evaluation provides a valuable overview of financial natural gas hedging, including the benefits and risks that accompany the implementation of such a program. ORS supports the additional exploration and assessment of the costs and benefits associated with the natural gas hedging program as discussed in the report and by company witness Dr. Fang. ORS reviewed the company's projected sales and analyzed them with regard to the projections from its last fuel proceeding and the actual sales from the actual period. ORS found the company's sales projections to be reasonable. ORS reviewed the company's forecasted costs for nuclear fuel, coal, natural gas, fuel oil, transportation, environmental reagents, and the purchase power for the estimated and forecasted periods. ORS compared the monthly projected cost to historical projections, actual data, and the commodity prices from numerous industry publications. ORS found the company's forecasted cost to be reasonable. Subsequent to the filing of my direct testimony, ORS signed a settlement agreement with the company and the South Carolina Energy Users Committee. Should the Commission approve the terms of the settlement, the average monthly bill for a residential customer on rate 8 using 1,000 kilowatt hours would decrease from $146.30 to approximately $131.85, a net decrease of $14.45 or 9.88%. For general service and industrial customers, the proposed rates would decrease the average monthly bills by approximately 11.76% and 17.36%, respectively. I support the terms of the settlement agreement. This concludes my summary.
Mr. Thompson and Mr. Hyatt, please answer any questions from CMC Steel and the Commission.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. CMC Steel, any questions?
Nothing from CMC Steel.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions for this panel? Hearing none. Gentlemen, thank you for your testimony and your appearance here today, and we appreciate you being here, and you may stand down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further from the Office of Regulatory Staff?
No, Chair Belzer, that concludes our case. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further from any party? Council, I'd ask that you meet with our Commission Council and discuss a date for proposed hearing, proposed orders in this matter. And if there's nothing further to come before the Commission today, and hearing nothing, we wish you all a good day, and this hearing is adjourned. Thank you very much.